Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development and another episode of Sales and Cigars. Sitting here today enjoying one of my Helix cigars. And the guest today is Kevin.snow, Time on Target, business partner of another guest that is his episode dropped a few weeks ago, Donnie Bovine. They do the Success Champions Network. They've Kevin's business is Time on Target, where they do automation the right way, where it's authentic and it's not this AI that just goes out and just blasts everybody. They take a really cool approach to this. He explains it. So if you have any interest in upping your game with top of the funnel and having a better buyer's journey with your company, Kevin's a good place to start looking for solutions. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another great episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Kevin, I really appreciate you taking some time to jump on the program with us today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Walter. This is really cool. I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
So we talk in the green room, so to speak, kind of like to have a little chat, and I just want to share with the audience that we were talking about ice fishing. And could you just give 30-second review of the freaking structure that you were talking about, or how you guys operate there?
When you say ice fishing, to most people that don't live in the north, they think you just walk out on the ice and you drill a hole and you sit over it and you fish all day. There are people that do that, but most of us, because literally when we do this, it's so cold. There's what we call ice houses, ice shacks, and it's literally a wood building. It usually has 4 or more beds in it. It has a propane tank attached to it, so it has a heater. Most people will put on a satellite dish, so they have TV inside, and it's got holes drilled into the floor, so you can get to the ice, drill your hole in the ice, and then you can drop your lines while you're in the house. So you literally sit in the ice shack and hang out with your buddy or your family, drink some beer, play cards, and fish the whole time. And then you stay out there overnight because it's got beds, and it's you spend a whole weekend fishing.
So it's like a winter cottage, if you will.
Yeah, it's like a hunting shack that you'd have out on someone's hunting land, except it's sitting out on a lake that's froze over. And our ice will have 4 feet of ice, or our lakes will have 4 feet of ice. So we literally drive our trucks out onto the middle of the lake, park them by the house. There'll be 100, 200, 300 trucks on the ice, plus all the houses and all the people. So yeah, it's literally like driving on land, except not.
Except for it's ice.
Yeah, except for it's ice.
So I grew up in Michigan, and we drove a van out when I was younger, my dad and my uncle, and we went out ice fishing for the day. And we didn't have a shanty. We call them shanties here.
Yep.
We didn't stay the night. I've never heard of somebody hanging out, sleeping, and I mean, it all sounds fine. It's all except for the cold part. That's but I guess you dress for all that too.
Well, yeah, and you have a heater in the shack, so it's not like you're cold. It's 60 degrees in there, and the ice is thick enough that it melts and it refreezes underneath. So it's not that
So
it's comfortable.
And the ice houses have outhouses. Is that how they work?
Some do. Yeah, some do have bathrooms in them, and there's some that are double deckers and will sleep 12. So you can get all sizes of them. The nice ones are all decked out and paneled, and have nice pine woodworking in it, and so
awesome. Well, I love learning new things, and that's new to me, so that's awesome. So let's dive in. Time on Target is one of your companies.
Yep.
Let's sort of talk a little bit about that. But why don't you give a little background of on what you do, how you got started in it, in your approach, and then I want to dive into the sales automation component of what you do.
Cool. So yeah, I actually launched Time on Target as a company back in 2010, and that actually the focus at that point was on me training and me speaking. So I was a director with a large networking organization at the time, and other territories, other regions were asking me to come teach their teams how to launch groups because I was really good at it. So I was like, sweet, awesome, I'll totally come teach your team how to launch a group. Uh, Love to visit Houston or Miami or wherever it was. And they're like, yeah, and we'll pay for your airfare and your hotel room. I'm like, sweet, that's awesome. And we'll give you money. Like, oh, and you're gonna pay me? Sweet. So awesome. I was ready. I was more than willing to shell out some money to go do this. So I had to create a company to accept payments so that it wasn't just, they weren't just like paying me directly. So Time on Target became a coaching and training company. And other businesses then would start hiring me to come in and teach their teams how to network and how to do sales and all that type of stuff. It was really awesome. And then I deployed to Iraq for a year. And right at the end of the surge towards the drawdown, we were actually the last gun truck out of the country, out of Iraq, was our battalion. So I was there for a year in Kuwait and Iraq, and I came back and I had no speaking gigs. I had nothing on my calendar. I had nothing in my pipeline, and I really had that oh crap moment as a business owner. That I just found the major flaw in my business model, and it is the fact that I can't be gone. So I really had that realization that I didn't have a business. I had just a really cool job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did this huge shift in my business at that point, from me being the product to coaching and consulting being really the focus of what we did, and going into businesses to help them launch sales teams or rehab existing ones. So we'd come in and we'd look at how they did their hiring, what their job descriptions looked like, their compensation, how they did training. We'd look at how they did their onboarding, mapping out their sales process, teaching owners how to actually manage salespeople, because it's different than managing a tech or a construction guy. So we taught them all that stuff. And at the end of the 6 to 9 month engagement, they had their playbook on how to run a sales program. And they had 2 or 3 salespeople hired that were out actively selling. And it was really fun. But I started finding all kinds of things that I didn't like doing and that weren't scalable in my mind. One of which was doing the interviews for salespeople.
Yep.
You know, if you're hiring 2 or 3 salespeople at a time, that's a ton of interviews for that initial round that you go through. And I couldn't have more than one client. I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. I totally want more than one client a month. So
who was the target? Who, like, was it a startup? Was it somebody like young and the founder needed to add more people? Who was your target?
So it was usually companies that were at their second stage growth. So they'd hit their one plateau and now they're getting ready to do the next one. The founder had been doing a lot of the sales. They had revenue. They were successful. They understood who their clients were, but they were trying to figure out, all right, so how do we go bigger? And the CEOs were all self-aware enough to know that they didn't know actually how to manage salespeople or how to bring salespeople on effectively. Or I would go into companies that were at that same level, but they had gone out and hired a bunch of salespeople and none of them were selling and they weren't getting the results they needed. So we'd come in and do a rehab program. I would occasionally work with startups, but they were funded startups. So they had gone through a seed round. They had money to pay for stuff, and they were looking for results and trying to figure out how to accelerate that piece. So we had for them, it was really managing, hey, CEO, you have to go sell because you have to figure out your product and what it is. But let's look at now how we also bring on salespeople at the same time and keep the program fluid enough so that they can keep up with all the rapid changes that your software company is going to have as you're developing this product from scratch.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
cool.
Yeah, so that's how Time on Target got started. And then I just kept narrowing it down to what I do now with the just sales process and automation stuff.
Is there a limit to the team or limit to the size to who you want to work with?
No, when I was working doing that type of consulting, and I don't do much of that anymore just because of the time it takes for me to do it. Most of the teams were under 10, or there were none of them at all because they were trying to launch it.
Yeah.
So then it was getting them their first three. And that was really our goal, because then they could hire three, figure out which one doesn't work, get rid of them, and you'd still have two decent salespeople on the staff, as opposed to, we're going to hire one. Well, what if they don't work? Then now you're
Right.
back to nothing. So we helped them figure out the whole concept of how do you do continuity. Well, you hire more than one at a time, then you can fire people and you still have a team going and you still grow. So, but yeah, now it's all focused on going into businesses and helping them actually figure out how they sell. What is your process? How does your buyer make decisions? And that's scary, because most businesses don't understand how their consumer actually makes a decision to say, yes, I'm going to give you money. So
It,
that's
it,
really our big focus right now.
it is a scary thing, and they don't realize that they have no idea, what the criteria is, what that journey looks like for
Yep.
them, and they still think it's the 1950s. And if they just go in and say, I got this cool widget, or I got this cool service, and it does
Yep.
this and this, that's enough. And um,
Exactly.
it gets them to a certain point, but they can't get past that.
Yeah,
So
and if you find that client where you can go in and say, "Hey, did you know that you have this problem?" And we see this all the time in other companies in your industry, and we can help you do it. If you can find that person where you can have that conversation, like, "Wow, no, we didn't even know that was a thing." Oh, really? Now you control that sales process, and that's the unicorn in the sales world right now. When I started in sales back in the mid 90s, that was standard. I would go into a company and I would be the one introducing them to the concept that they had issues and that we could fix them, and I got to help create the criteria. And if there was, I loved it when I got into a government or a larger business account and they did an RFP. I got to help write the RFP. Now all the criteria fit me and fit my product, but that's not how it works anymore. They've already passed 50 to 60% of their buying process by the time they engage a salesperson. So it's understanding for all that marketing stuff and the automated tools and the content on your website. What are those key questions that people are asking at that first 50%? So it's you're serving them the right answers that they're looking for and getting them to keep engaging and moving down that virtual sales pipeline until they're ready to actually talk to a real person.
and that's where, I mean, that's the connection. That's the natural flow to the sales automation, is matching that
Yep.
buyer's journey with the ability and get crisscross that, and then be able to pick them up and take them at the right time, because you're saying the right things at the right time to the right people.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting to serve up the right content so they're getting their answers or their questions answered that they need, and helping them start asking the right next question so that you can keep feeding them that content and they keep consuming it. And then once it's in that salesperson's hands, then the automation really comes into how do you keep the salesperson doing sales stuff and not trying to find content, not writing repetitive emails, not doing reports that the sales manager could get out of a system by hitting a button, and actually out in front of clients. So we do a lot of work with teams on figuring out what that process looks like and where we can now inject an automated sales email
Mm-hmm.
that's serving up the right amount of content after a specific point in the sales cycle is reached, that then the salesperson doesn't have to think about, oh, what should I sell or what should I send them? I got to find a case study. Do I send them this one? When I was in sales, I knew all the folders that marketing hid stuff in when I was at Nextel, because back before they had all the more much better folder and data security, I
Right.
could find all the marketing folders. I knew all the cool stuff that they were working on, and I was able to steal stuff and make stuff. But that's not what you want me to do. You want me out in front of clients. You want me talking to people, not creating content and
Right.
trying to develop that type of stuff.
And salespeople like to hide, think they're being busy. When they're doing that, makes them less effective, inefficient, and but they walk away feeling like they did something that day, and
Yep.
it's
Oh,
just
I
the
was
wrong.
all productive. Look at all this cool stuff I made. Well, did you sell anything?
Yeah,
No. Well, then you
how
weren't
many,
productive.
yeah, because that's the measuring stick, is the purchase orders and the closes,
Yep.
not the pretty stuff that was created. So
Exactly.
so uh, the idea of automation, um, I was looking around on your website, and there's there's a scary part of automation. I see it 5 or 6 times a week where somebody sends me an email or they send me some sort of a message on LinkedIn thinking that they know exactly what I'm doing. And it's like, I don't know how I got on a list, but everybody wants to sell me a franchise.
Yeah,
Um, and I
I
don't,
get those all the time too.
and I've sent the guy, no, like, why am I on this list? Why do you think I want a franchise? Right. And then I've interrupted their AI automation, whatever you want to call it. And the good ones will be like, I'm sorry. And then they try to like tell a different story. But um, most of them just kind of like run and hide because they didn't
Yep.
want to talk to somebody to begin with. Um, so, can you speak to the idea of how your automation is more authentic and real and somehow controlled?
Yeah, so I don't like LinkedIn automation at all. And I never recommend that to clients because LinkedIn doesn't like it either. And you put yourself at risk. They're not real fond of that. They want real authentic communication on their platform. So when we do automation and we do the drip campaigns, it's all based on someone having actually opted in. So they've downloaded something already and they've said, yes, I want this information. And then the focus is, especially in the early parts of that sales pipeline, the focus has to be on education. It's all focused on giving them content and getting them to click through and keep reading and being able to track that behavior so you actually know what's going on in their head. And that's really key. Most people and I just met with a client the other day and we're redoing a bunch of their campaigns. Their first email was, hey, here's the free thing you downloaded. Click this link to set up a consultation with me. I'm like, they don't know you. That's literally like the old style telemarketing call.
Yeah, you haven't earned
You're
your right
gonna
yet.
yeah, you're gonna get some people who take it, but at least back then you were able to build some value that they didn't know was talking about an issue and how you could help them. They're like, oh, I'm kind of curious. Let's talk more. But now, if you do that, they're going to go online and try and find more information before they want to meet. So
Mhm.
for us, those initial emails all have to be content based. It's, here is more information. And the call to actions in those need to be really focused on getting them to engage more, either replying with, yeah, here's my question, or here's what's going through my head, or getting to click onto a link to another piece of content that they can download or that they can read. So for us, all the writing style has to be very personable. Marketers, and I tease marketers all the time, that they write a very specific way. You can tell when an email comes to you and it's been written by a marketing team
Mhm.
because it sounds like a marketing person wrote it. My business partner Donnie has a very specific way that he talks and that he writes. He doesn't use commas, and he misspells words and he swears. So when we send out content that's coming from Success Champions, supposed to be coming from Donnie. We misspell a couple words. We don't use all the right commas, and we throw a couple f bombs in
Mhm.
normally
Is
because
that
now because it sounds like him and people actually think he wrote it and he's talking to them. When I write it, for me, we use different style of grammar of how I speak. I don't swear as much, but I'm not opposed to dropping an f-bomb. But it has to sound like now Kevin's talking. So that's really key for a lot of brands, especially when they're a small business, where Nike has a specific corporate tone. But
Mhm.
for companies like ours, it has to be a brand that fits us and fits us as a CEO and how we communicate. So all the messaging has to sound like us. And because people need to feel that they're building that relationship with a real person. And that's going to get them to keep clicking through and engaging because it's like, oh, it's Walter talking to me today. And
Yeah.
that was a really cool message that Walter sent. I want to get more from Walter.
And I would bet that a lot of the business owners, the entrepreneurs, they know they have a style, but they don't know the style.
Yep.
But but it but they have one, right? So how do you pull that out of them to be able to create that authentic copy?
So it's a multi. there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. One is getting to know them and understanding how they communicate and watching their, especially if they're a coach or consultant and they've been on podcasts. You can pull the style out of that from watching those episodes and figure out, hey, here's how they talk, here's what they say. Here are things that they say all the time that are catchphrases for them
Yep.
that need to be thrown in and that we
So
need to utilize.
it's listening and paying attention to what they're
Yep.
doing and picking up their style. And I think once you start doing that, you really start to understand, at least from a sales perspective. I listen, see how somebody's talking. I try to adjust my use of F-bombs to theirs, like where I'm going to use them regardless, but I have to be a little bit cognizant um, of my audience.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we teach people is, once you figure out what your style is and who you are, and because we want business owners to be themselves. You shouldn't have a business persona, and then when you get home at 5:30 at night, there's a whole different you that comes out.
Right.
You need to be you the whole time, because that's a qualifier for people.
Right.
If people don't like the real you, or if people don't like the real me, I don't want them as a client. They need to.
But being able to feel comfortable disqualifying people for that reason, I think is a really powerful message
Yes.
for people to grasp that you, I'm not for everybody. I don't work well with everybody. And whenever I try to do something, like I can work with this person, I can get them to see, but we're not simpatico or whatever, however you want to look at it. Cause I can't change. I am
Yep.
who I am. And it, and like I said, the smallest viable audience is a big enough audience for me. I'm not Nike.
Yep.
I'm not trying to take this whole space. There's plenty of room for people if you're real, you're authentic, and you can create value. And being able to do that well and be authentic is not something that I think is common. They end up sounding like the marketing
Yeah.
people you talk about.
Exactly. The ability to have someone self disqualify them and to then be able to say that's okay, that
Mm-hmm.
they aren't a good fit for me, is really powerful for a business owner to be able to do. Because now they've just given them self permission to say no to people too.
Yeah,
And
and it's that works in an interview process when you're trying to hire a salesperson or anybody else. That this is our culture, this is what the role looks like, this is who we are. I start that from the very beginning,
yep.
describing who we want, who we don't want, and let them select. It's attracting the right people and repelling the ones that aren't going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, business should be fun. It's hard work. It's long hours, but if you aren't enjoying working with your clients, you probably have the wrong clients. And you
100%.
need to figure out, why am I attracting these people that I don't like working with? What am I doing that's bringing them in? And how do I start attracting the people I do like working with? And then figure out what all the commonalities between those people are, and then focusing on that. We've had multiple people leave Donnie's and my coaching groups or the Success Champion networking groups because of how Donnie talks. We're like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Donnie is uh, Donnie is a redneck from Texas. Southerners talk a specific way. They say honey and deer and all these different things, and it's not a personal thing to anyone. It's just how people in the South talk. I'm from Minnesota. When I was down there in September, we would go out to eat. All the wait staff at the restaurant, all the different restaurants we went to, I was always honey or dear or sweetheart.
Sweetie's
Yeah,
another one.
sweetie. Can I get you some more sweet tea, sweetie?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And it's okay, because that's the culture. And it's if people don't like it, that's fine. Awesome, sweet. Someone else will be okay with it because they'll understand it. So
Yeah, I interviewed Donnie a little bit ago, and his episode's going to drop here shortly. And um, I found his approach and his use of language, fun, colorful, entertaining. Um, but at the core, you could tell he gave a shit about what he was doing. There was passion there, and that he really wanted to help people, and he wanted to help people this way. And if they don't want
Yep.
to be helped that way, then there's probably 5 or 6 other people you could, go try to
Yeah,
find.
exactly. And what you just said, that, at the core, he wanted to help people. That's a real key thing for salespeople and business owners in general. You have to want to help the people that you're talking to. You need to have this idea of how you can improve the world and how you're going to make a difference in these people's lives, and believe it. If you don't, if you're just out selling stuff to try and make a buck, that's going to come through, because that's when you're going to start using all those really horrible sales tactics, like the Ben Franklin close, or the takeaway close, or all those things you see when you go buy a car.
Right.
They're not in it because they really love selling cars. They're in it because they love selling cars and getting the paycheck.
Right. Yeah, it's
And
transactional, and
exactly.
I there's a term that people use all the time, consultative, and they use it in the wrong way, but it's to me, sales is about trying to help people do the right thing. And I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning where I told him a story where a guy called me up. This was years ago. I was in the sign business, and he goes, I want a sign over here on my building on the side here. I want it to be this big. I want to do this. And he's like, how much is that going to be? And I'm like, it's really a $15,000 to $20,000 sign, but I'm going to have to charge you 30 to 40 because you're going to hate it. It's not going to work. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And I'm like, it's it's the wrong side of the building. All the cars go by on this side over here, right? And you got 40,000 eyeballs going by. That's where you should put your sign, not over here, because you see it when you get out of your car.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that. And he's like, okay, well, what is that going to cost? I'm like, I don't know, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, something like that. And he's like, you just talked yourself out of a bunch of money. I'm like, no, I didn't. I talked myself into having a happy customer who's going to go tell everybody in the world that I did a good job.
Yep.
And he's like, okay. And we worked out a deal. He was super happy. It drove traffic to his business. And that guy, over the course of the next 18 months, told 5 people in his little community, come talk to Walter, because he's not going to steer you in the wrong direction.
Yeah. If you would have just done the order taker thing and said, yeah, we totally can give you that sign, you would have ended up having to come back, paying another crew to move it because he didn't like it and it wasn't getting any benefits, and he wouldn't have paid for that.
Right.
And you would have been out more money.
I would have had a disgruntled person. But for me, and this I think speaks to the core of what you said before about transactional people, is it's not ethical. It's not the right thing to do, and it's not helping people. And if you don't do the right thing, and they might not want to hear it, right? And it's our job to say, this is the right thing to do. And sometimes it's more money, sometimes it's less money, sometimes it's not what they expect. But regardless, it's the right thing to do. And I don't know Donnie as well as you do, but I know that he's going to want to do the right thing. You're going to want to do the right thing for those people, and even if they don't understand it, that's still the approach you're going to take.
Yeah. So, one of the favorite things for me is when I'm working with a client and we build them out some really cool stuff and get it rolling and it's awesome. And then they call me back a month or two later. It's like, oh my God, you won't believe everything that's been happening since we started launching this program. And all, we got this, our biggest client, we've increased our sales, all this positive stuff. And I'm like, sweet. That's what, drives me with the sales and the automation stuff, is helping other people be successful. Yep. Because that is fun for me. And it's so cool when I get those phone calls. And then I'm like, sweet. And now I'm jazzed up to go do more stuff for other people because we had really good success with someone. So,
they're jazzed up too to go tell other people. And
yeah,
and it's like watching a salesperson get better, right? There's a certain amount of joy just to like watch somebody elevate their skills, but also elevate their income. So it's joy. It's the reason for doing all the hard work. So, if somebody wants to, they're an entrepreneur, they're they got a couple of salespeople, and they know their messaging is a little off, and they're trying to generate top of the funnel. What's the best way for them to start? How do they start with you, and how do they start with the company?
Well, the best thing, I'm going to answer that in two different ways. One, the best thing that they need to do is actually just go out and ask their clients, have real conversations with their customers, and ask them about the sales process and what questions were going through their minds and how they identified that, we need to talk to someone, and start figuring out all those things, and then that gives them the questions that they need to be answering. And then they can take it and just put it into the right order and figure out, what is the natural order based on how everyone's answering stuff. But that concept is so strange for most business owners. When we come in and we engage with a client, and we're like, yeah, we're going to want a list of your best clients, and then we also want a list of your clients that aren't maybe as happy with you right now. And they're like, why? Well, because we're going to set up interviews with them, and we're going to ask them tons of questions about why they bought from you and how the sales process went. And for a lot of the CEOs, like the color just leaves their face.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're going to do what? I'm like, I mean, you've never asked your clients stuff and got feedback on your sales team?
No, that's scary.
No. Yeah, that's scary. We don't know what they might say. I'm like, exactly. We're going to fix that. So, and then I do the interview without them there.
Sure.
So now they're talking to a third party that's not employed by that company. So that those conversations are so powerful. And most companies, most clients, if you come up to them and say, hey, we'd love some feedback about how our sales went with you, what you liked, what you didn't like, and what was going through your head, so we can get better at servicing our clients. Most of them are like, I'm in, let's do this. And they're going to be excited. If they like what you're doing, they're going to want to help you get better, because they want to keep you around. No one wants to change vendors.
Right.
That's a pain. So, asking your clients and having those conversations is so easy to do, but people are just really scared that they might hear something bad that shatters their vision of what their company actually is.
Yeah, but it is easy, and it's productive, and it allows you to get better, allows you to better serve those people.
Yep.
It's an easy thing. Um, so I love it. I love the fact that it's authentic. We're going to speak in their voice, and we're going to try to figure out what the right. It's not just a cadence. It's more of like what that buyer is looking for when they're looking for it, providing them that so that you can come together quicker, more
Yep.
efficiently, and effectively. That's great. I think second to last question would be like, let's talk. We've mentioned Donnie a couple of times. He's been on the podcast. You guys have kind of like teamed up to make an approach. Why don't you share a little bit about that before we wrap up? Because that's a fun thing for people to get involved in.
Yeah, so Donnie actually started off as one of my clients, and he was in the beginning stages of Success Champions and really trying to figure out what everything was. So it was a lot of fun, because it was literally us just throwing ideas off each other, like, oh, what if you did this, and what if we do that, and I can build this thing, and he's like, I'm thinking about doing this, and like, I can build that. So we just kept trying all this stuff, and then in March of 2020. When the lockdowns hit, we were supposed to be launching this really cool event called the Badass Business Summit the following month in Fort Worth. Live event. We had 22 speakers coming in, 150 people attending, and we're like really excited. Had spent way too much money on an event that we didn't have at the time, so we're looking for it to be really big and a really cool thing. And then everyone's like, "Oh, you can't travel, you can't leave your house, stay home." So we're like, "Crap! Now what do we do?" So we launched Success Champion Networking, because we had been spending the last couple of years figuring out how we do business online, and how we generate revenue for our business, and how we serve clients from a virtual standpoint. But we realized that no one else in the world, no one else in the country, all these businesses that were now stuck at home had no clue. They had no idea how to do this. We're like, we have to help them. So we launched Success Champion Networking and started launching these virtual networking groups all over the country to allow businesses to get together and still talk about what they have going on, and start making introductions to other businesses, and really help them keep their businesses afloat. and it hit a need that we didn't realize that was there in the marketplace. And we went from, we launched the first group in a week, and Donnie literally is like, hey, I'm launching this thing, I need you to come do it. And he called in a bunch of his favors in Fort Worth to get the first one launched. And then we all of a sudden we had groups in Maryland, in Bethesda, and then we had groups in Cleveland, and then in Florida, and now we have 50 groups all over the United States and Canada. And we have other countries that are like, we want to launch groups too. So now we're in talks with 3 different countries to launch chapters in their countries. So it's been really awesome because our focus was to fix all the stuff that people hated about business networking.
Yeah.
You go to those networking meetings like, oh, that was just I just wasted 90 minutes of my day, not counting the drive time. So we took all the stuff that both of us hated, got rid of it, and like, how do we actually add value so that people spend an hour with a bunch of other businesses and they leave every week saying, oh my God, this was awesome. I learned something that's going to actually help me grow my business. And that's what we did. And we launched Success Champion Networking. Shortly after, about a year later, we launched Growth Mode, the podcast. And now we're getting ready to launch our 3rd season of that in January. And we're excited about that. The Badass Business Summit keeps growing. And we just keep expanding and getting better and getting that work with some really cool businesses all over the country.
Awesome. That's a great story. You turned like a shit show into something that was really helping. Because for a lot of people, shutting everything down, um, turned their life upside down.
Yep.
And they didn't know how to handle it. And I remember back. I mean, I've been doing online stuff for a while because it's easier, more efficient, and I hate going to airports. Um, but everybody's become more accustomed to it now. It's not so foreign.
Yep.
People aren't afraid to turn their camera on because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I love it. Is there and when you form a group, is there like a nucleus that you need? Is there primers? Like how does that work?
So we usually find the president first. So it's usually what we call them get shit done people. So GSDs. So they are people that are not just, they aren't necessarily the networkers in a community. They are the people that make the introductions. So we don't want the people who just know everyone. We want the people who are actual connectors that are like, hey, Walter, you need to talk to Bill. And they're pushing people together. So we usually find that person. Then our next step is for them to find their leadership team. And once they have their 5 people total, then we start the weekly meetings and we start bringing in general membership. So, most of our GSDs will get to their 5 people in under a month. And then they start meeting and we're working at getting them to 10. And then they're really on their own. And then we're coming in doing training and supporting them as they grow. But the goal is to get them to, be self-sufficient and to be really focused on introductions as opposed to referrals.
Yep. Good.
So
and
it's all about getting them
online, or is it a face-to-face?
No, we do everything virtually. Okay. And it's all on Zoom. So they're still geographically based, but we do it on Zoom because, I live an hour north of Minneapolis. If I go to an in-person networking group in the metro, which is where I'd want to be in, I have to drive an hour to get there, and then I'll have to drive an hour back afterwards. I literally have taken up half my day.
Yep.
Yeah, I can make some phone calls from the truck, but it's not the same. So we wanted to get rid of that drive time. We wanted to make sure that hour was really packed with stuff that's going to keep them engaged. So you're not just jumping on the call and, doing other stuff while you're kind of paying attention. So, there's round tables, breakout groups, virtual mini virtual coffees. You aren't just sitting on a call. Yeah. It's really about, hey, how do I help you? What do you need to know? How do we meet? And you're really spending the hour brainstorming and figuring out who needed to connect everyone to.
So it's a networking mastermind, like introductions, let's help each other kind of a deal. Awesome. All right. Best way for people to find that?
The best way to find a group to visit is just go to successchampionnetworking.com.
Okay. All right. I'll have all that in the show notes. So my last question, the way I wrap these up, and your answer, it doesn't really, I've had answers from no fucking way, I hate them, to it tells you great stories. cigars. Does Kevin have a relationship with cigars, past or present?
I have a really nice humidor sitting on my back of my shelf with the yellow tassel. So yeah, I absolutely love cigars. I don't smoke them as much as I used to. That used to be our when I was deployed. That was our all right. The day's done. We're gonna relax. So we'd have a cigar. So I had a really nice humidor over there as well. So I tend to I like the acids, and Drew Estates
Mm-hmm.
are the ones I go for a lot. Um, so yeah, give me that and a good bourbon, and I am very happy.
Oh, my kind of guy. What? So if you had the right Drew Estate, what's the right bourbon to go?
The one I really like right now is one called Horse Soldier.
Okay. I just
So
the liquor store I go to when I go like looking for something because I got 75 bottles in my collection.
nice.
Um, I just found that one. I haven't brought it home yet, but that's one of the ones that I think I want to pick up next.
Yeah,
I don't go through
last
bottles fast, but that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't go through them very fast either. I got my first bottle of that through one of those Christmas exchanges. Send a bottle of bourbon to one person, then put the post on your Facebook and have other people opt in to do it. So, the 21st century version of a chain letter. I ended up
Sure.
getting like 4 bottles of bourbon for Christmas that year, which was just awesome because, we were still kind of in the COVID thing, but
Hmm.
that was one of them. And I tried it. I'm like, oh, I really like this. I think this is one of my favorites now. So
Awesome.
I,
Love it.
I
Great story. And a cigar and a bourbon in the ice house. Is that a thing?
yes, totally. Or if you're going to be ice fishing with the bovines, it will be a cigar and Captain Morgan.
Ah, not tequila,
So
Captain Morgan.
yeah, but
All
yeah,
right.
bourbon, beer, whatever you want to drink is totally appropriate in the ice house.
All right. And what goes on in the ice house stays in the ice house? Is that
Yep.
simple? Okay. So let's leave it there. I appreciate you taking some time to hang here. You got a great story, some great ideas with automation and the networking. I'll have all that info in the show notes. People can reach out, and I appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. This is a really cool conversation. I really appreciate it.